Have you ever been recommended a manga or even been reading a manga and thought, if this is so good, how come it doesn't have an anime? Where's the anime at for it? Well, today, that is what we're going to talk about. My name is Berthrilled, and today we're going to be talking about why don't some manga get animated? Obviously, there's many examples of manga that have not been animated, and I'm just going to give you the first reason for a lot of them. A lot of them just, quite frankly, are not good enough, are not worth the time. And now, a lot of you are going to sit there and say, well, there's a lot of bad things that do get animated. I get it. They animate literally all the isekai slop you see out there. Are there some good isekai? Yes. 90% of them are garbage, and they still animate those. So I get it. I get what you guys are saying, like, oh, that's clearly not the criteria. I mean, I was just looking at Crunchyroll, and some of the anime I saw on there are absolutely atrocious. For example, we have something called Solo Camping for Two. The one where it's like the reborn as the seventh prince, and the title is like 7 sentences long. I'm sorry, but anything with the title that long should never make it into anything, I'll be honest. Being born again as a vending machine or whatever it's called. Like, yeah, it's funny or whatever, dude, but really, like, this is getting animated before many classic manga. And then Toilet Bound Hanako as well, another one I noticed, and I was like, wow, I cannot believe these are actual shows that are getting animated before all these amazing and masterpieces of manga. So next, that leads me into some examples of some of these great manga that have not been animated, right? We'll talk about why some of them haven't been animated, and we will talk about why these examples in specific have not been animated. So to start off with, we have the most famous one, which is definitely Vagabond. Why hasn't Vagabond been animated? Well, we'll talk about that soon. 20th Century Boys as well, Holy Land, Fire Punch, Goodnight Poon Poon, and The Climber. Those are just the ones I picked out today. You can pick out a lot of different ones online, or maybe that you have read. Like, for example, I know there's ones like Homunculus and some other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head, but those are going to be the ones we're going to be focusing on today because those are the ones I'm most knowledgeable on, and those are the ones that are very, very popular. So to start off with, I have 3 theories as to why some of these manga don't get animated. Now, the first one is not really a theory. I think it's pretty simple. They're just too dark. For example, Fire Punch and Goodnight Poon Poon. I could maybe see Goodnight Poon Poon maybe get animated, but I really doubt it. I think these manga are just way too dark, and any of them like them are just fit in that category. Like, some of the stuff that happens in Fire Punch, I can't even say on YouTube because it is so, like, incredibly vulgar. But Chainsaw Man got animated, written by the same guy that did Fire Punch, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess anything is possible, just don't see it happening because there is a bunch of crazy stuff that happens in Fire Punch that honestly is not even 18 plus. It should be 30 plus with how intense it is. So I think some of these manga are honestly just too dark to get animated. These studios don't want to take on these really depressing and overly vulgar manga. They're just like too much, I think. I think that's pretty likely for quite a few of these mangas. So that covers really Fire Punch, Goodnight Poon Poon out of the list we have. Next, we have Author's Choice. I think Author's Choice, I'm not 100% sure, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe Vagabond was said by the author that he didn't want it animated. Some of the other ones, I'm not 100% sure, and I really don't know why, because we're going to go over the examples after I give out my theories and try to match them and maybe give a potential hypothesis. But for Author's Choice, I mean, maybe some authors are like, hey, the way I did it is the best way. If you don't want to see it that way, then you don't get to see it at all, which, fair, I guess. I mean, yeah, if you don't want to read it, you don't want to read it, and then you'll never experience it, and I guess that's up to the author, right? That's up to them if they don't want their story to be expanded upon, I guess. And my third and final theory is there really is no good reason. It just happened not to happen, which I think is honestly what happens to most of these. Maybe things just fall through, or they don't get pushed hard enough by the right people, and they never get turned into anime. So now we're going to go back over the examples that I gave and my personal theory about why these haven't been animated, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into detail as to why I think personally a lot of great manga don't get animated. So we're going to start with Vagabond. So I think Vagabond, as I talked about earlier, I believe the author said he didn't want it animated. I could be incorrect, but also Vagabond's a story that, likely will never finish because the guy just doesn't want to finish it. As well, I heard it might be a little too difficult to really encapsulate the feel of it into an anime. Like what they tried to do with Uzumaki, right? Uzumaki was incredibly popular, and then they tried to animate it, and it fell incredibly short. So that might be another reason why they don't want to do Vagabond. But I don't think that's a valid reason for a lot of these, especially Vagabond. I think Vagabond anime would be really easy to do. I don't think there's anything too complicated about it. And so for me, I think you know, if what I heard was correct, the author's choice, I think that's why it hasn't been animated. It should get animated, though. Fantastic story, and like I said, I think very easy to do. But yeah, Little Strange, it hasn't been animated when Slam Dunk has been animated, but I guess he saw how that went and was like, hey, I don't want any of my other stuff animated. I don't know. Maybe that's why. Maybe he wasn't happy with how Slam Dunk went, and so he didn't want to do anything else. But if I'm not mistaken, Slam Dunk is still getting stuff coming out, so I don't really think that's the case. But next, we're going to move on to 20th Century Boys. Now, this one really stumps me because the guy that made this, he has he has 4 really main manga, right? And all are really popular. He has 20th Century Boys, Monster, Pluto, and Billy Bat. Now, 2 out of the 4 of these have been animated. And Billy Bat is the least popular manga, so obviously it hasn't been animated. But 20th Century Boys is arguably the most popular manga out of those 4. Yet Monster and Pluto got animated, which is strange that 20th Century Boys did not. Because I don't think there's anything too complex about 20th Century Boys to where it can't be. Or maybe these studios don't want to take it on. That is the only reason I could see personally, because clearly the author of 20th Century Boys does not have a problem with his manga turning in the anime. It's clearly not his decision. Well, I don't want to say his decision because it might be, but he's clearly not against making his manga into anime, right? He did it with Monster, and then he took a long break, so maybe he didn't care about it anymore. But then Pluto came out a couple years ago, so clearly he still doesn't really mind if the stuff gets animated. Maybe it's different for 20th Century Boys and Billy Bat, I don't know, but there is still potential there for it. I don't know, maybe the studios don't want to take that on. For me, this is one that falls into that no real good reason at all category. Like, I think it's hard to find a reason as to why it has not been animated. Next, we have Holy Land. This one just stumps me completely. This one's not too dark. It's not too all over the place. Now, it is kind of dark, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty much like a serious street version of Ippo. So to me, I don't really understand how this hasn't been animated, especially because, no diss to the guy that wrote it originally, his art isn't really that great. I think an animation would actually do this story wonders. It would honestly be great for it. Maybe he doesn't want to animate it. I don't know. Some of the notes he leaves on the manga, he sounds kind of bitchy, so maybe that could be the case, honestly, because he complains a lot in the author notes, at least from where I've read. So maybe that's why I could totally see that, but I'm not 100% sure. But that's a story that would be really easy to adapt, and I really have no idea why it's not an anime. It seems, like I said, very easy to adapt, very simple. It is a little bit dark, but not too dark where you couldn't have it on there. I think it would be totally doable, and I'm a little confused why that hasn't been animated, personally. We talked about Fire Punch and Poon Poon, but I'll go over them really quickly again. Fire Punch is incredibly, like, obscene, I think that's the right word. It's like 30 plus. Like, you don't need to see any of that, like, animated, I'll be honest. Poon Poon as well, it's very, very, very dark, and I just think no anime studio really wants to take that on, I'll be honest with you. And then lastly, we have one that doesn't really make sense to me, and I don't think fits any of these categories, and that is The Climber. If I'm not mistaken, The Climber is finished. So you don't have the issue of, oh, they want to do anything else with it. Like, I'm pretty sure it's done. It's not too dark either. Like, it's not really that dark of a manga, so I'm not understanding. Author's choice, the only thing I could see is, like, it was done by somebody and then they stopped it and then somebody else took it over, and maybe, like, they need permission from both or whatever, something like that. But to me, that still doesn't make sense. I mean, literally the only thing I could see is the author being like, no, I don't want it, because The Climber is incredibly popular, one of the most popular sports media, especially over in Japan. And so for a studio to do it would be incredibly easy as well. That's an incredibly easy story to get done animated. The Climber, to me, probably makes a little sense to not have animated. I'm not really understanding why no studio. I'm sure studios have reached out, but I'm not really sure why nothing was agreed upon. And so I guess that moves into the final talking point, which is about why are some of the, like, manga not being animated that we haven't talked about here, and maybe it hasn't gone over in the theories. I don't know. Maybe the money's not good enough. Maybe they just don't feel like it's worth it. Maybe the headache is too much. There could be so many different reasons. But yeah, hopefully all good manga gets animated, and hopefully people read all good manga, right? Like, I think maybe a lot of authors are worried about people not indulging in the original story. But in my opinion, if I was an author, I would want them to indulge in the story any way they possibly could. So I guess it's just preference on what the authors want. Maybe the studios don't want to deal with it, like some of the manga are too dark. But I don't know. It'd be nice to see some of these classics get animated eventually, but who knows? We will see. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe. Hope to see you in the next one. Peace.